Is it possible to settle your debts for pennies on the dollar and have them completely removed from your credit reports as if they never existed? Well, the answer is yes, but it's with this little known loophole that I'm about to share with you in this video, so let's get into it. Okay, so some of you have heard of what we call a restrictive endorsement, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of backstory about what it is. So essentially what it is you sending a letter to your creditors and collection agencies in advance, and every state is going to be different. It might be 14 days, it might be 30 days, and if you're not sure in your state, just do 30 days just to be safe. You send them a preliminary letter with some kind of trackable mail that essentially says, I'm going to send you X amount of dollars, and this is going to fully satisfy this account, and you list the account number. If you don't have the full account number, at least list a partial account number as it appears on your credit reports, which is Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And so the thing about this is you have to be careful because some states don't honor it, or some states allow the creditors and collection agencies to fight it in court, and I will list what those states are in the description box below this video. But even if you do live in one of those states, I would still do it anyway, because if you have a little bit of money to be able to satisfy some of this debt from your creditors, you can literally pay some of these debts for pennies on the dollar and have them completely removed from your credit reports as if they never existed. So let's talk about exactly how this whole process works, why you want to do it this way, and you get started doing it, right? So here's the thing. A lot of you don't want to pay your creditors at all. And I get that, but if you did run up the debt, it's obviously the good thing to do if you can, to pay some of your debt off if you can afford it. But the good news is you can pay between 5 and 10, maybe 15, upwards of 20% of what you actually owe with this strategy. So if you owe, say, Capital One $10,000, you can offer between $500 and $1,000 to satisfy this debt and have it completely removed from your credit reports as if it never existed. So it's not going to show as settled or paid as agreed or anything like that. It's literally going to be eliminated and taken off your credit altogether, which is what you want, because it's permanently damaging your credit right now as it stands, and you don't want that anymore. Okay? So let's talk about exactly what restrictive endorsement is, and maybe this is a strategy you want to use to be able to get some of this credit, some of this negative debt off of your credit reports. And so essentially what you're going to be doing is going to my website, getdisputeletters.com, down below in the description box. There's no www, it's just getdisputeletters.com. You go there, you can download my free dispute letters. I also have the restrictive endorsement letter that's now up there as well that you can download. And you're essentially going to use that letter. Now, what you're going to do is it's a two-part process, all right? Now, first of all, I want to back up and state that this is only to be used in the event that you're unable to get certain things off your credit. So this is assuming that you've already gone through the dispute process already. Maybe you've already tried to connect with the creditor by actually asking for validation of debt. Maybe you've done all of these things already and nothing seems to be working. If you have not done any of those other things first, I strongly urge you to go to my YouTube channel and take a look at exactly how I share with you how to work through the dispute process first. Do that first. And this strategy is an all else fails strategy, which means that if you have not been able to make that work, then we do the restrictive endorsement, because we're definitely trying to get these off of the credit reports permanently. All right? So say you've done all that stuff. The stuff is just not moving, okay? And you want it off your credit immediately, and maybe you do have a little bit of money to pay some of your creditors. Maybe you only have a few $100s. That's fine. Whatever you have, let's see what we can do to work with that. So what we do is we send a letter to the creditors. Now pay very careful attention to this, because people always blow up the comments asking these questions that I cover in the video because they don't want to listen to what I'm saying in the video, okay? So listen to me very carefully. You don't want the letter to come necessarily from you, okay? It's not going to come from some third-party organization. It's not going to come from some other random person or pen name or anything like that. But you don't want to mention that it's from you. You just want it to be a form-looking letter that doesn't basically say it's coming from you or basically coming from anybody. And the initial letter to the creditors and collection agencies is going to be the following. It's going to state that you're going to be receiving a check for, let's just say $500, to satisfy this debt account number, blah, blah, blah. You know, and you're just going to include whatever data and information you have on your credit reports if you don't actually have the full account number. So on X date, you're going to receive this check 30 days from now. And once you cash this check, this debt will be considered fully satisfied, and you will be removing this permanently off my credit reports immediately after you cash that check. Okay, so that's letter number one, and again, you have to send a trackable mail. So 30 days goes by, then you send them another letter. And so this is basically the letter, and the letter is, this is just the letter that you can actually download from my website, which is getdisputeletters.com. This is the second letter that they received 30 days later, and you definitely want to send this by way of certified mail. This means that you have to go into the post office, walk in there, wait in line, and you should send it like this. I strongly urge you not to use your personal information up here. Do not put your name up there. If you have a P.O. box, even better, just put the P.O. box information. If you don't have a P.O. box or some other address, then just borrow, you know, your mom or dad's address or your sister, brother's address, whatever, and put that here. And then you put the name of the creditor and their information here as it appears on your credit report, because their information by law has to appear as far as their full address on your credit report. So you'll put that here. And then this will be on the back. So this will actually have your address. Now somebody asked me in the comment section, does this actually have to have your name? No, it doesn't. You can have, like I said, a P.O. box with no name. You can put your dog's name if you want to and your address. It doesn't have to be your name, but it does have to be an address where you can receive this. Now, don't ever think that they're going to be able to rip this off and take photocopies. Somebody else had a kind of a moronic, you know, comment in the comment section that said, well, you know, what happens when they take photocopies of this and they know exactly who's sending this? Who's taking all these photocopies? U.S. Postal Service person, postal carrier, walks into their office if it's an actual street address, or this actually sits in their post office box if it's going to their post office box, which 95% of the time it's going to a post office box. Some schlep rock from the company has to stand in line for an hour and do this once a week or whatever, twice a week, and go through and actually sign all of these things. So how are they taking photocopies of this card before the postal carrier from behind the counter rips it off and pops it in the mailbox that goes then to you? No, what do they have, a pocket Xerox machine? I mean, that's not how life works. Okay, some of these comments, it's like nobody thinks anything through anymore, which is really upsetting in today's day and age. But anyway, enough of my rant. Nobody's making photocopies of this. Nobody is. And even if they are, well, it's, you know, Snoop Doggy Dog is here, the name of your dog, and then your P.O. box is here. If you're that paranoid, okay? The main thing is that they are signing this. This is what we call a wet signature. They're going to have, you're going to actually have to put in this area here the name of your creditor and the P.O. box or wherever it's going as per your credit report, what it shows there. And then they're going to sign and date this side. And then when the postal carrier or the postal person behind the counter pops this in the mail, you'll receive this about a week or so later. And you'll have verification that they received this document in this envelope, okay? So you'll also get this receipt. By the way, just don't tear these off. Let the postal service person behind the counter stamp this and rip this off at the time of your transaction, please. Because if you have 10 of these, I've seen it time and time again where people will rip all these off and then the postal guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, you got to match up these numbers with every envelope, and then the person's holding up the line forever trying to do all that. Don't do that. Just leave these attached. Postal person will give this to you with a stamp, okay? Now, that takes care of that. Now, what goes in this envelope, you're probably wondering. Well, what goes in this envelope is letter number 2. Remember, this is the letter that comes 30 days from the first letter, which is just trackable mail. The first letter is just trackable, does not have to be certified. The second letter is certified, okay? Remember, we're talking about the actual, the card. And then they're getting a check, okay? Now, here's the check. Now, listen to me very carefully, okay? Listen to me very carefully. This check can be one of two things. Give me one of several things, actually. It could be a U.S. Postal Service money order. It could be a cashier's check from your bank. Or it can actually be a business check from a business that you own. Now, if you've watched any of my business credit videos, you know that I'm a heavy believer in the fact that if you want to get access to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on unsecured credit to ultimately buy a business, build a business, invest, etc., you're going to have a business at some point anyway. So now might be a really good time for you to do that. So if you don't have a business yet, maybe you should get a business. And then ultimately, once you get a business, you can get yourself a business checking account. And then that way, when you have these checks, just have the business name on there. Don't even have your name on it. Just your business name and your business address, which is ideally not your home address. So spend the extra money, folks. Get yourself a little P.O. box, okay? You can actually use the street address from the post office. So case in point, a couple streets, that way to where my office is. I actually have a post office box, but the street in which the post office is located is also a street address I can use on my checks, as if it's a regular street address. The zip code is going to be slightly different, and if you're not sure what the address is for your post office, go to google.com, type in post office near me. It will give you the exact address where your post office is, the exact street address, and the exact zip code. Now what will happen is when you go get your P.O. box, and it should be the smallest P.O. box you can get, you want to save yourself some money, what you'll do is you'll use their street address, their city, state, zip code, as if it's as is on Google, but you'll put number and then the box number next to the street address. So if it's box number 70, you'll just put the street address and then you'll put number 70, the number sign 70. And that's legitimate. That is a legitimate street address. And that's what I recommend that you do on your business checks, is that you have the name of your business, not your name anywhere here, and your street address for your business, okay? And again, you're going to have a business anyway if you're going to start building business credit. But that's a different subject for a different day. I'm just assuming some of you already have a business checking account, in which case, hopefully you have checks that don't have your name on it, listed as CEO or whatever. And if you don't, then get yourself some checks from the bank, order some, and just say, hey, I want some new checks. Just make sure my name's not on there, just my business name. So that's what you should do if you have a business. If you don't have a business, then you're going to have to use the cashier check strategy, or you're going to have to use a U.S. Postal Service money order. Now, the important part of this check is what's said on the back. And in the description box below, I will mention exactly what you're supposed to say on the back of this check. And it's essentially saying that by endorsing this check, you are agreeing to satisfy account number blah, 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 blah in full, as paid in full, okay? And so I will again put exactly what you're supposed to put on the back of this check. And so what happens is, even if they don't sign it, which 99.99% of the time nobody's signing these checks, they're just stamping the back of them. And then it's just going to be some, person who's opening the mail that's stamping it. They're not even reading it. That's not your problem, by the way. Then once this is deposited and it clears, then you can go and dispute everything with Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, saying that the account has been paid. So I had actually uploaded some new Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion dispute letters. Yours will say that, this one actually says dispute for inaccurate information. You're going to actually say dispute for paid in full accounts. And so you're basically going to say that the account was paid in full, okay? So that's what you want to do. And then if you wanted to, you can actually include the additional information for the restrictive endorsement. You can include a copy of this letter that they received, the copy of the cash check front and back, and a copy of this showing that they received the check, okay? If you want to go ahead and do the extra steps, I recommend you do the extra steps, because you're showing that you sent the restrictive endorsement letter, you show that they received it, you show the front and the back of the check showing that because they endorsed the check, they agreed to the terms and conditions, and it'll be deleted off. Now, let me warn you, doing this right off the bat with the proof part is probably not the recommended strategy. I would just do a straight dispute, okay? Just a straight normal dispute, rather than sending the copy of the check and all that. Do that the second time around if it doesn't come off. Just do a regular dispute the first time around, because then the credit bureaus might argue, well, they didn't agree to this. They didn't agree to these terms and conditions. You just basically forced it on them. And you might be in one of the states where it's not fully legal or fully recognized to do restrictive endorsement. And so knowing that information, you might not want to push the envelope so far or try to rock the boat that much. And so essentially what you should do is, once they cash the check, and it's going to be kind of tricky when you have a U.S. Postal Service money order, because you're going to have to check and see, and you're going to actually have to get the draft document of them having cashed it. So make sure that you keep all of your ducks in a row. Make sure you keep those receipts, that the tear-off receipts from your money orders, because you're going to need those to be able to verify whether or not they actually cashed your check. That's why it's a lot easier when it's cashier's checks, and it's definitely easy when this is your business checking account, because you can just go online, print the front and back of the check when they cash it, and that's just much easier, and usually there's no cost involved to that. So that's the fastest and best way. Plus, when it has your business name on it, not your name, they don't really know where the money came from, okay? Because here's what we don't want to do. We don't want to trigger the debt again from day one. And a lot of people don't know this, but if you make payments to a debt that's been kind of idle and sitting there for, say, 4 years, then it could start the debt all over again from day one. And many of you don't know, but much of this debt can fall off at the 7-year mark, which means that at 7 years and 1 day, that dormant debt should be off your credit reports. And if it's not, definitely dispute it, because it should not be on your credit reports after 7 years, okay? So please note that we don't want to trigger and start over that clock from day one. And so what ends up happening is that if you're essentially paying toward the debt and admitting that it's your debt and trying to make good on the debt, that can actually backfire. This is why when we do our restrictive endorsement letters, letter 1 and letter 2, you're not actually mentioning who you are. You're not even signing your name. You could just scribble some kind of initials at the bottom. They don't really know where they're getting this money from. It could be an attorney, could be your brother and sister, could be somebody else, but they don't know where the money's coming from. So you're not actually admitting to the debt at all. So it's tricky for them because they don't really know where they're getting this money from. They could be getting it from maybe you died and maybe your estate is giving the money up. They don't know where the money's coming from. That's why when you send these letters, I don't really recommend that you put any of your personal information here at all, because again, better off if it's just a P.O. box, no name at all. And then that way, again, they don't know where this money's coming from. And then finally, going back to the check, if it's your business account, they don't know who owns the business. On top of that, they can't levy the account later if they want to sue you. So for example, if they're like, no, I don't want to take, $1,000 for a $10,000 debt, I'm just going to sue that person and try to get the full amount. The problem is if you use your personal account, then guess what? They now have your account number, and they can potentially levy that account after they get a judgment against you. So that's why we don't want to use our personal bank account for any of this. A business bank account, they cannot levy because it's got a different EIN number, which is essentially the social security number of your company, and that's a completely different entity. It's like a completely different person. It's like if you had a twin brother or sister, and that person has obviously a different social security number, they're a different person, man. So that's kind of how your company is. When you have a company that has an EIN number, not your social security number, you should always set up a company that has an EIN, which stands for Employer Identification Number. You should always set it up that way. And so when you open up your business checking account, it is literally a separate entity. You're just a signer on that account. So they can't levy a business account, which means that you can write these checks out, and when they cash them, guess what? They've agreed to the terms and conditions as listed not only in your restrictive endorsement letter, but they've also agreed to the terms and conditions on the back of the check. Make sure that you write it very, very clear. Make sure that you write it legibly, like as small as you can, to be able to get as much of it as you possibly can at the top. And then that way, the very moment that they actually endorse it, they're agreeing to the terms and conditions of the restrictive endorsement agreement. And then once that check clears, like within seconds, you should be disputing the amount in your credit reports, because in the very least, it's inaccurate. Like they're saying you owe $10,000, but you just paid $1,000 toward that, which means technically you still, if they really want to push it that hard, you would owe $9,000, which means that the $10,000 figure that they're still showing is technically inaccurate. So the first round of disputes after this process should be, this is inaccurate, or you could say this has been paid in full. And then if it still doesn't come off, then you need to show documentation showing that you actually went through this restrictive endorsement process, including the copy of the letter, copy front and back of the check, and then copy of this showing that they received it. If that still doesn't work, then we pull out the big guns and we have to file a lawsuit against both the credit reporting bureaus who are not removing this debt and the creditor themselves, because they cashed a check agreeing to the terms and conditions that you presented 30 days in advance with letter number 1, and then 30 days after that with letter number 2 with the restrictive endorsement legalese on the back of the check, or money order or cashier's check, and they cashed it. If they did not want to agree to the terms and conditions, they could have ripped up the check or mailed it back. And they chose not to do that, which means that if you decide to file even a small claims lawsuit in your jurisdiction, it would be in your jurisdiction because you're the one being damaged, not them. So it would be in your county. You could file on an app. I like the Squabble app. You can use whatever app you want to file on small claims, or just go down to your courthouse and file a small claims lawsuit. But you can go to squabbleapp.com, file the lawsuit, get a process server to serve them, and you can sue them for damages, which would be the maximum amount in your state against a company. Company amounts are going to be higher than when you try to sue somebody's personal, person. So for example, if, your neighbor's dog attacks your dog and you sue that person, that amount is going to be less because you're suing an individual versus if you sue a company, which would be Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. Those are companies. And suing your creditor for cashing the check and not removing it off your credit report, even though they agreed to the terms and conditions by simply cashing the check, okay? So this is a way of doing it if you have the money to pay it. If you don't have the money, don't do it. Now you're probably wondering, well, Monica, what's the smallest amount I can get away with? Can I get away with sending them $50 if I owe $5,000? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I wouldn't send $1, that would be way too small of an amount. But say you have $50 or $100 and you're trying to satisfy a debt that's $1,000 to $5,000. Now that doesn't mean that they'll take it, but remember at the end of the day, restrictive endorsement is restrictive endorsement. You gave them the paperwork with letter number 1, and then you gave them the paperwork with letter number 2 with the restrictive endorsement check that they apparently agreed to when they stamped the back of it and endorsed it and cashed that check, which means that's a legally binding agreement. Listen, they jerk us around all the time, okay? They change the terms and conditions of all of the lending agreements and the credit card agreements all the time. They basically send out a letter to you, whether you get it or not, they don't care. Sometimes they'll send you an email saying we're updating our terms and conditions of the agreement of your credit card. Okay, well, how many times have you actually gotten it? How many times has it ended up in your spam folder in your email? You never received it. How many times have you not gotten the mail at all because it got lost? And yet, they play these games, jerking us around with these changes in their terms and conditions all the time. So it's now time for you to turn the tables on these creditors and say, okay, well, I'm going to use the law now in my favor, okay? And the cool thing about this is that with these restrictive endorsement letters, you basically are going with the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC code, which is listed here. It's an actual federal code that you can use in your benefit to be able to get ahead of the credit game here. So if they want to use terms and conditions all the time, throw that in your face, just mail you random letters that they don't even get signatures on, by the way. You're getting signatures from them, or you're getting trackable, mail from them. But if they're trying to play the same games, it's time for you to start turning the tables. It's time for you to start empowering yourself and getting some of this crap off your credit. So essentially what you want is this whole thing to fall off, this whole account to disappear as if it never existed. Because if they do try to update it and do like settled as agreed, for example, that's still not going to look good on your credit. It's basically going to look like you tried to take some kind of less than settlement, and that's still not going to look good on your credit. You always want to do a pay to delete, meaning that you want to completely delete it as if it never existed, because it's already a bad account. Might as well get rid of it altogether, right? So that's what you're aiming to do, is with this restrictive endorsement to essentially pay to delete the account. So remember, you can go to my website, getdisputeletters.com, down below in the description box, and get the new restrictive endorsement letter. And remember, you don't want to use your personal information on there. Just scribble some signature at the bottom. Don't even say it's you. Don't say it's not you. Just basically make it look as form letter-ish as possible. So then that way they don't know where it came from, right? Because we don't want to reset the debt from day one. And they could always assert that if they suggest to the court, if they decide to take you to court, hey, this person started to make a payment, even $1 payment, that restarts the debt from day one, the clock ticking all over again. We don't want to do that. So that's why we need to make sure that these don't really include any information about ourselves except for the debt. So just basically make it seem like it's coming from a third party, and basically make the whole letter kind of a third party letter. Like you're talking about somebody else, like you're writing the letter about somebody else. That would be your brother and sister, but it's actually really you. So it's going to be a third person letter, like you're talking about somebody else, even though you're talking about yourself. So you're going to basically say, in reference to the account belonging to your name here, as if you're talking about somebody else, with account number blah, 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 in the amount of XYZ, you know, we are, you know, or you could just say it is being offered the amount of blah, blah, blah to fully satisfy this account. And we will, not we, but an amount of $50 will be sent to you on X date, which is 30 days from the date that they received the letter. And once this amount is cashed, then this amount will be satisfied in full and it will be removed immediately from the Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion credit reports, okay? So that's essentially what the letter says. So again, there's going to be letter number 1. Have them trackable mail, does not have to be certified. Make sure that from the day that they receive it, then that's when the 30-day time clock starts ticking. 30 days goes by, then you send them the second letter. That's going to be certified. Remember, second letter is certified. First letter is trackable. Second letter is certified. With the letter, with the check, and then basically, you know, with the stuff that's on the back of the check that basically says once you endorse this, then this account specifically is paid in full. And then you just wait until they cash it. They might mail it back. 9 times out of 10 they cash the checks because there's so many people that are, you know, checking the mail. They get thousands of payments a day. They're just endorsing in the bank, endorsing in the bank. They're not checking anything. They're not reading anything. They just don't care, okay? So that's how you can get one up over on the system, all right? So again, everything's third party. Make sure that your checks either are a business account that do not have your personal data on there, or you have a U.S. Postal Service money order, or you have a cashier's check. Ideally, the cashier's check might even be through one of your family members' accounts and not yours because you don't want your name on there, but you do want to have your name and account number in the memo section of the cashier's check. You just don't want the cashier's check to be specifically from you. Most of the time when you go to the bank and get a cashier's check, most of the time it'll say some kind of memo and it'll actually be from the bank itself. So make sure that the bank references your name and the account number that you're satisfying, and then don't forget to put that stuff on the back of the check or the money order. You have to do it that way. If you don't, you screw this whole process up. I will have everything that you're supposed to write really small and very legibly on the back of your checks and money orders and cashier's checks in the description box down below. So make sure you go to getdisputeletters.com, no www part, getdisputeletters.com. There are thousands of people that use that website every single day. So if you can't get there the first time around, make sure that you hit it up again a couple hours later. I'm in the process of putting up another link, so then that way you guys have a secondary link in case you can't get to that one. But basically, that's where you get all the free downloadable letters, including the restrictive endorsement letters that I'm talking about. If you found that this content was helpful, give me a nice thumbs up, as well as subscribe to my channel. Also make any comments about any specific videos that you'd like me to work on and do for you moving forward. In addition to that, there's over 3,000 of you that are part of my school group. So if you want to communicate with me directly, you're going to have to do it through school.com/Monica Main, which is down below. It's a free group now. I'm going to start charging in the near future, but if you lock it in for free now, guess what? It'll be free forever for life, okay? So you want to get into that school group because there's going to be over 3,000 people right now, like-minded individuals just like you that you can network with, but also you can get free book downloads, free courses, free credit building stuff, all kinds of stuff. Plus I have a bunch of new stuff coming as well. So you want to get into that school group as soon as possible. And if you have any questions, you could always direct message me through that group, okay? All right, everybody, this is Monica Main signing off, and I will see you in the next video.